She stood at the doorway with empty hands and a heart that felt heavier than the silence around her. The house that once echoed with laughter now felt like a place that had never belonged to her. The man she trusted, the man she loved, the man she built her world around had just walked away without turning back. He did not shout, he did not explain, he simply left as if she was nothing more than a phase in his life, and not the woman who gave him everything. Her name was Aisha, and for years she believed that love was enough to keep a relationship alive. She ignored the small changes in his behavior, the late nights, the cold responses, the way his eyes stopped looking at her with warmth. She convinced herself that every marriage had storms, and that patience would fix everything, but she was wrong. The day he left, he only said a few words: "I am tired of this life. I want something different." Those words echoed in her mind again and again, like a cruel reminder that she was no longer enough for him. He packed his things slowly, while she stood frozen, unable to speak, unable to cry, unable to understand how everything fell apart so quickly. After he left, the silence became unbearable. Every corner of the house reminded her of memories that refused to fade: the kitchen where she cooked his favorite meals, the couch where they once sat together planning their future, the bedroom where promises were made and broken. She felt like she was living inside a ghost of her own life. Days turned into nights and nights into endless thoughts. People around her whispered, some blamed her, some pitied her, some simply watched her fall apart without offering a hand. Her own relatives told her to accept her fate. They said a woman without a husband has no place in this world. But something inside her refused to die. One night, as she sat alone staring at the ceiling, she realized something important. She had spent her entire life being what others expected her to be: a perfect wife, a quiet woman, someone who sacrifices everything for others. But in the process, she had lost herself. That night she made a decision: she would not beg for love. She would not chase someone who chose to leave. She would rebuild herself, even if it meant starting from nothing. The next morning she stepped out of the house not as a broken woman, but as someone who was ready to fight for her own existence. She had no money, no support, no clear path. But she had something stronger than all of that. She had determination. She started small. She took a job that many would consider beneath her. But she did not care. She worked long hours, ignoring the judgment of others, ignoring the exhaustion, ignoring the pain that still lived inside her. Every step she took was a step away from the woman she used to be and closer to the woman she wanted to become. There were nights when she cried quietly, remembering the life she lost. There were days when she felt like giving up, when the world seemed too heavy to carry. But every time she thought about stopping, she remembered the moment he walked away without looking back, and that memory pushed her forward. Slowly things began to change. She learned new skills, she built confidence, she started to believe in herself in a way she never had before. People who once looked down on her began to notice her strength, her hard work, her transformation. Years passed, and Aisha was no longer the same woman who stood helpless at the doorway. She had built a life of her own, a successful career, a strong identity, and a heart that no longer depended on anyone for validation. One day she received news that shook her. Past had returned. Her ex-husband, who once left her without a second thought, was now struggling. His new life had not turned out the way he expected. The person he chose over her had left him. His success had faded, and he found himself alone. He wanted to see her. At first she hesitated, not because she missed him, but because she wondered if she was ready to face the chapter of her life that once broke her. But then she realized she was no longer that person. She did not fear him anymore. When they finally met, he looked different, not just older, but smaller, as if life had taken away the confidence he once carried. He tried to speak, but words failed him. He looked at her with regret, with guilt, with something that resembled longing. He said, "I made a mistake." Aisha listened quietly, her face calm, her eyes steady. She did not interrupt, she did not react, she simply let him speak as he tried to explain his choices, his failures, his realization that he had lost something valuable. When he finished, there was silence again, but this time it was different. It was not the silence of pain, it was the silence of closure. She looked at him, and for the first time she felt nothing: no anger, no sadness, no love, just peace. She said, "You did not lose me that day you left, you set me free." Those words hit him harder than anything else. He realized that the woman standing in front of him was no longer the one he abandoned. She was stronger, wiser, and completely beyond his reach. He asked for another chance, but she gently refused, not with bitterness, but with clarity. She had moved on, not just from him, but from the version of herself that once needed him. As she walked away, she did not look back, just like he once did. But the difference was she was not running away from something, she was walking toward a life she had created with her own strength. People who once doubted her now spoke her name with respect. Her story, became an example of resilience, of transformation, of what happens when a person refuses to let pain define them. Her return did not come with revenge or anger, it came with success, with dignity, with a quiet power that shook everyone who once underestimated her. And in the end, the greatest victory was not proving him wrong, but proving herself right, that she was always enough even when he could not see it.